Hi, my name is Samantha Johnson. I live in Edinburgh at the moment. I moved here about 3-ish years ago now, after leaving London to get away from some pretty serious stuff with my family and the community I was in. So I moved here to get away from it. And since then, it's just gotten worse, and it's kind of unfolded. It's been this puzzle that's just been coming together more and more, and it's just absolutely horrific. I need to share what's going on because it's just going on, and no one's doing anything about it. I'm fully aware that there's enough stuff going on in the world at the moment that's bad. People probably don't want to hear this, but I think it's important that it's out there, so that people know, so that if anything does happen to me, then it's kind of, I don't know, just people know what's been going on. So in March of 2022, I was planning to go to the police about historic abuse and organised crime that my family are involved in, I believe to be involved in. Around this time, I had started seeing this girl, and I had started getting gradually more and more unwell when within this time scale that I've been seeing her. It was only a couple of months, and I started having these chest pains, and I was just extremely unwell, and I couldn't work out what was going on. I couldn't figure it out. I didn't understand why I was getting gradually more and more unwell. And I went to the doctor about it, and they basically turned me away with no help and said there's nothing wrong, blamed it on my mental health as usual. And then one night the girl had been round, and I drank some wine out of a bottle that she refused to drink any from, which was really unusual. And it tasted really badly of chemicals, and then the next morning I kind of blacked out, and the next morning I woke up and I was having extreme chest pains and stuff, extreme. And then I kind of knew what had happened. At that time I knew that my drink had been spiked. I didn't know at the time that it had been happening for a while, but there we go. So I ordered a test from Amazon because I've been having problems with the NHS for an extremely long time, very bad problems. And I knew they wouldn't listen. They blame my mental health. So I got a test online, and it came back positive for arsenic. Later on I did another test, and it came back very, very strong for lead. So I went to A&E knowing that this is what happened. This is what's happening, and I brought the test along with me. It was next day delivery, so it came really fast. And I went to A&E with the test. They turned me away, said they've got people who are actually sick to treat. Didn't even take me into a room, just turned me away in the hallway, and extremely dismissive, extremely rude, completely ignored the test. So I sent away with no help, and I had a heart attack, and I've just had to gradually heal from that while I'm going through all the stuff that I'm about to tell you. While I was in that A&E appointment, the nurse didn't tighten the blood pressure thing on my arm. She didn't put the temperature thing in my ear. It was hanging off, so nobody was interested in helping. That was quite obvious. I didn't quite understand at the time the depth to which these behaviours go to, or why this was happening, but it's kind of unfolded, and I see more now of what's going on. So at A&E I called the police, and later on that evening they came round to take a statement. So I gave them the statement, I gave them the evidence, and then later on they said that they were closing the investigation because there was no SA involved, and so an attempted murder, they wouldn't investigate for that, but they would have investigated, they said, if there was an assault component to the crime that had happened. So they refused that, and then I was desperate after that, and I kept asking, how can I get it reopened? This is not right. And they said I said if I can get the test done, if I can test the substance, because I still had some left, with a better test, could you possibly reopen the case? And they said yes. So I spent months kind of recovering and building up to doing it because I couldn't deal with it. I was really unwell at the time, and at that time, around the first police thing, I started having problems with identity theft and fraud. And this girl, I hadn't noticed before, I hadn't clicked before, but one of the nights she stayed at my house, I had woken up from what was the best sleep of my life, and I couldn't work, I didn't think anything of it at the time. I thought, oh, it's just an amazing sleep, I'm just happy it was there. But in looking back, I recognise that type of sleep. It's medication induced, it's heavy medication induced. That's the type of sleep you don't have anywhere else, you don't have naturally. And that morning that I'd woken up from that sleep, she had been in my main room. I don't know what she was doing. And looking back now, I believe that she was going through my paperwork and my cards and stuff, because the fraud and identity theft started directly after that. I reported this to the police. They wouldn't take a report because they had no evidence. And then the fraud and identity theft have continued until now. Soon after that, or around this time, I went to the police anyway about the historic abuse, because I hadn't gone but at this time. And then after this stuff started happening, I realised, like, wow, something is much bigger here than I realised, and I really need to do this because something really wrong is going on. So I went to the police about that. They said they couldn't take a report because it's not from this area. So I just gave them the information I had, and yeah, and then I went to Surrey Police with the information, and they were exactly the same, totally dismissive, blamed it on my mental health, said there's nothing they could do, no crime had happened, even though I had lists of abuse and neglect and plenty of stuff like fake birth certificate, plenty of reasons for suspicion of organised crime, financial abuse, all this kind of stuff. They said no crime happened, and again they shut it with no investigation at all. During this time I was making complaints about what was happening with the police, because they were being really dismissive, and the gaslighting and the tactics and the way they talked to me, it was extremely humiliating all the time. They would blame everything on my mental health rather than listening or looking at the evidence. There was plenty of evidence of everything that was happening. They were not interested in hearing any of that or seeing any of that. And even if they did, they just pretended they'd never seen it and carried on the way they were going. They had no interest, and I realised then that I was dealing with some pretty serious levels of corruption. So I started recording everything. I started ordering copies of the reports, and the reports were filled with lies. The reports, even to the extent of having quotes that I had never said, whole quotes. They had made up entire quotes. And then I've made complaints about this, and the police office, most of the time, like the response to complaints, one of the police officers isn't available. They've left, they've retired, they're on holiday, we couldn't find them. And the others are just fully lying. The other officers they do talk to are just completely lying. So it's my word against theirs, and they automatically default to me being the problem. Yeah, so I've got a whole list here of all this stuff. Yeah, and this entire time I've been trying to get help from the NHS. This is a long-standing issue for my whole life, and I don't know how much I'll go into that because there's some information I need to keep to myself, because it's important that it stays to me for now. But the NHS have refused to treat me. They've just been monitoring me for a very long time. Take bloods, never ever do anything to help. And always completely dismissive. Refused to send me for investigations for health problems I need. Refused. I've had no NHS mental health support for many years. I had a quick brush with them when I got here to Scotland, and I was diagnosed with autism, ADHD, and my CPTSD remained the same. That was a good experience, but then they discharged me while the doctor was on holiday before they should have. That was the only good experience I've had in about 20 years since I moved to adult services. Yeah, let me just... Yeah, I called the NHS crisis lines, and they've basically accused me of being manipulative while I'm calling in distress about this corruption I'm dealing with, that no one will listen to me, that people are poisoning me, and I've got evidence of it, and like lots of evidence of it, of what's going on and the corruption I'm dealing with, and they're just dismissing me and saying I'm manipulative. I called another crisis 24-hour line, and they've said they can't help me because it's out of hours when it's a 24-hour service. The only time I did have an assessment with a psychiatrist, apart from one that was on the phone, way before that, when I was really unwell in a homeless hostel, was when the police accused me of being delusional. But they accused me of that because they completely ignored the evidence, and they completely ignored the truth of the situation, and instead defaulted to accusing me of being delusional because it fits their narrative. And I went to see the doctor, and it was confirmed that I'm not delusional. I don't have schizophrenia. It's just a natural reaction to the situation that I'm in. During this time, the whole 2-3 years, every time I've tried to get help, all they do is keep increasing the medication, to the point where, like in the last year or two, when doctors have seen the medications I was on, they're like, you're on a lot of medication. This is very strong. You're on heavy doses. And I was like, yeah, I know. Because they won't send me, and they won't give me any help. They refuse any help, and they just keep medicating me to shut me up. Since then, I'm all off all of my medications. I'll kind of explain that more later, though. Around just before the poisoning, I forgot to mention this. I had been talking about going to the police about the historic abuse and the organised crime and stuff, and there was a fire under my bedroom in the building I was living in at the time, and it felt like a warning. And I'd said to the girl that I was seeing, I said, this feels like a warning. And looking back, she's the only person that knew. And if that was a warning, it's because she's involved with the organised crime, which she does seem to be, because I find it hard to believe that all of this isn't linked, because the timings are too off. There are some other strange situations where she has brought up totally irrelevant information about my family, and it appeared very important to her. I won't explain all of it, because some of it's important to keep to myself as well, but yeah. And at this time as well, my devices and my Wi-Fi started getting hacked. I've had my calls directed to random numbers. I've had my texts directed to random numbers. I have had my email, all of my email accounts, all of my Apple accounts, everything has been hacked. My devices at one point, even the passwords, the passcodes for them were all changed. I was locked out of everything, had nothing. I couldn't get to my email accounts, couldn't get to my phone contacts, everything. I called the police. I had moved by this time, and I called the police about this to report it. And they also, again, every time I've seen them, pretty much they've refused to take a report and say no crime happened, even when they've got evidence of a CFS marker of impersonation. So evidence from credit companies that I have been a victim of fraud and impersonation. They still refuse to take reports, even though I'm showing them this evidence, telling them this evidence is here. And they just refuse to take a report and say no crime has happened. I've been told that fraud isn't a crime in Scotland by a police officer. I've been laughed at and bullied really badly, actually. They know I'm autistic, and they know my triggers for my PTSD, and they've really played on that and really taken advantage of it, and have been extremely humiliating, to be honest, completely abusive. And this has continued. This has been a running thread through all of my interactions with the NHS, the police, the charities that are involved. All of it. It's all had the same methods to trigger what's happened to me. And this is kind of the thing that ties it all up. It's something that's been happening to me from the NHS since I was a child. It's to the point where now that I've started talking about it, I am being a kind of trying to be shut down by every aspect of government, because the more people that get involved without realising what they're involved in do illegal things they shouldn't be doing, and now that's just another bunch of people that are trying to cover up what they've got involved in, because they shouldn't have got involved in. Whether they know what they're getting involved in or not, I don't know, but they do get involved, and then they're also having to cover for themselves. So it's just getting harder and harder, and I've got more and more people going against me. When I got into this house, that I met a charity worker, a support worker I was referred to by another charity that didn't want really anything to do with me, wasn't sure why. They referred me to another charity, and this guy, he was giving me endless paperwork to sign, and then I found it really strange. It takes me a few days to process what's going on, especially if there are emotions involved or a lot of stress, which obviously there is at this point. So I asked him for copies of all the documents, and then he only sent half of them. So I said, where are the rest? And I remembered I was very suspicious signing them, so I'd used 2 different signatures, and he only sent 1 set of signatures. So I was like, where are the rest? And he wouldn't send them to me. So I wrote in a complaint, and they were panicking, and then they said they couldn't find them, and then they'd been shredded, but they had no evidence of this and no way to prove this to me. With the fraud and the identity theft that's been going on, I felt that was linked. Royal Mail in my last flat and this flat, they have been withholding mail and stealing mail, opening mail before it gets to my house when it does get here. I've made 6+ complaints, but they say that there's only 2 been made. It's not true. The first time I complained, the very next morning, a big pile of letters arrived. So I knew what was happening at that point. It's like, could you make it any more obvious that you've been collecting it? Why was that mail collected? Why wasn't it delivered? And then the next time I wrote a complaint, I thought, I know what's going to happen. They're going to wait a week, and or a few days, and they're going to do it again to make it less suspicious. What happened? The same thing happened. They a few days, a week later, they provide another bundle of post that's been withheld. Yeah, I've been making complaint after complaint. Apparently, they're not being registered. They say they're investigating. They don't investigate. They just ask the manager if anything's wrong. The manager says no, and so they leave it, which obviously isn't okay, because obviously the manager is having something to do with this. Postmen have put letters halfway through my letterbox. They've used the machine. You can hear it beeping, and they take them out again. They leave them barely in my postbox and don't push them through the door. This driver was relocated to another road. I bumped into him, and now he's back working at this road. They say they can't tell me the outcome of some of the investigations, but then nothing changes. So I think it's just another way. We can't tell you the outcome of the investigations. It's just another way to cover it up, because they're fully aware of what's going on and it's continuing. At this time as well, at the same time as all this is happening, I'm getting prescribed this medication, and it's weekly dispensing because it's for ADHD. So it's kind of it's regulated, you know, the ADHD, because it's like classified drug or something. And I was getting really sick. It's unsealed. It's dispensed weekly, so it's unsealed. It's not in the original packaging. And I was getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And it was the same poisoning symptoms that I had when I was poisoned with the wine, and the time before that. It was the same thing. So I was complaining to the pharmacy, and they say, oh, there's nothing going on. There's nothing wrong with your medication, making me feel like I'm crazy. And then I contacted pharmacy regulation. They weren't too interested. And then I contacted them a couple of times because it was continuing, and I was just getting sicker and sicker. So I had to take myself off those medications alone, with no supervision, no monitoring, no help, because I wasn't safe. And then the time just before I did my final pharmacy regulation complaint, the medication, I asked, can I go on to a monthly dispense to my GP, so that I know it's sealed, so I can be safe. And she said, oh yeah, no, but we have to do it slowly, once every 2 weeks, and then we can go on to monthly, which I thought was ridiculous. Because it was about safety, it wasn't about anything else. I can manage my medication. It's just when I got here, I couldn't. That was like 3 years ago. Yeah, for some reason she decided she couldn't. And I knew something was wrong at that point, and I knew I shouldn't take whatever arrives. And then what arrived, the medication arrived unsigned, unchecked, no signatures from the pharmacist, blank bottle with the label, but blank. And I realised that the antidepressants they'd been sending me were out of date. When I complained to the pharmacy, they said, oh, we always check, we have responsible pharmacists, we don't send out anything that's not checked. But they had it, literally, I had it was in my hands, it was unsigned, unchecked. And the medication was out of date. And then they told me some story about how the medication expiry date on the medication is wrong, and it's actually another date, it's just a code, but it literally had the date. So it's just ridiculous. So yeah, and then after I asked the pharmacy for their business details, because I wanted to start taking some real action against what was happening, they cancelled all my scripts and banned me from the pharmacy, and now they won't even accept prescriptions at all, and they refuse to provide any of that information that they are legally required to provide. I asked for details of the pharmacist who had been in charge of this medication, and again refused. I've been asking for legal help and from citizens' advice. I get completely ignored. I asked for help from human rights organisations, other legal organisations. Like I've lost count of how many organisations, especially human rights organisations, I reached out to for help. nobody is interested, nobody at all. I've asked like charities, companies related to the NHS, and every time they hear my name, they're always open to help, and as soon as they hear my name, they're just totally not interested. Yeah, so yeah, and this time when I was locked out of all of my devices from the hacking, and my phone's lighting up all the time when I'm not doing anything, emails getting deleted. I don't know what the emails are, what they're hiding, what they're trying not to allow me to see, especially with the post. Like, what post am I missing? Why? When I was locked out of my devices, the police just left me like that. I had no way of getting help. I had no way of accessing my bank accounts, emails, nothing. And they just laughed and just didn't help at all. Incredibly abusive in the way they talked to me, humiliating, gaslighting. It was horrific. It was awful. And they did nothing and refused to help again. The police told me about a false address that was on my medical records. The surgery denied this is true. I don't know if I've already told you about the surgery. My GP surgery have been completely refusing to give me any access to help. The problem is genetic, but they're refusing to send me for help for that because they know that the issue is there, because they've always known that the issue is there, and this is why I'm refused help. I'm not going to go too deep into why that is, but it's a long-term abusive, organised situation that's been going on since I was a child and born in 1990. There's some really dark and sick programmes in the NHS, and they are covering up what they've been doing because I started speaking on it. So yeah, and this involves the whole government, which is why I believe that I am being kind of stomped down by every aspect, because this is an organised cover-up of some really horrific human rights abuses and basically torture. I won't go too in depth about that because it's really horrific, and it's for another time. But yeah, it's horrific. It's like probably nothing you've ever really heard before. This situation is like nothing I've ever heard before. Never heard of anything like this. And obviously I'm not the only one in this situation. There must be other people in the same situation. I doubt many of them are alive if they're in the same situation as me, because this has been, I don't know how I'm alive. It's a miracle that I'm alive. I can just thank God for it. That's all I can say. Oh yeah, and the GP, I can't remember if I told you this earlier. Sorry if I did. But I've been trying to get help from them, and they just gaslight me constantly, deny truths, and they just are constantly misleading and misdirecting and trying to confuse me. And the gaslighting is really, really, really bad. It's really bad, and they won't stop. They completely deny facts and evidence, and they just say it's not true. You're crazy, basically. They don't say crazy, but basically that's what they're saying. I requested my medical records, and they took months to give them to me because they said they needed to prepare them, which they shouldn't need to do. You shouldn't need to prepare medical records. They should be ready. You don't need to edit records. It's not legal. You shouldn't be doing that. And when I did get them, there was a pile on the top that was just lists and lists and pages of just information that was completely untrue, that had never happened. And the information was just not true. It was just lies, complete lies. And I wrote a complaint to the manager about this, and she ignored most of the points of my complaint. And when it came to the points about the information that I was sent by the surgery, they just said that she just said none of it's true. It never existed. But they literally sent me documents of it. So they're lying. It's a cover-up, and they're covering up a lot of really serious abuse. I've had, my life has been attempted to be ended more times than I can count. More times. I've lost count a long time ago. And this is being done by the NHS and by local government services like the police. The police are leaving me to get poisoned and stuff. Also, it's happening with delivery apps. The Deliveroo, Uber Eats, Just Eat. I've made multiple complaints about this. People are picking up my orders, and then they're going to sit in random locations for ages, coming, I've eaten them, and I'm getting sick. Every time this has happened with an order, I've got extremely sick with the same poisoning symptoms that I'm getting in the medication and the time that I'm getting poisoned by this girl. Yeah, And no, I complain over and over again to Deliveroo and Just Eat, and they do nothing. They just cover it up and again say that we can't tell you the outcome of this investigation, but nothing ever changes, so they're not doing anything about it. It just seems sponsored to me, to be honest. On one occasion, the food went to an address that is, I believe, strongly connected to the reason that this is happening to me, a genetics company. And I alerted the app to this before it got to me, and then all of a sudden they cancelled the order, and it was damaged. They called it damage to the order, but they didn't do anything about it. Nothing else, no further action taken. Drivers are turning up, they're not the drivers on the app. Drivers are turning up, they're not in the vehicles, they say on the app. I've had more orders stolen from than I have full, and the orders that are full are normally not safe to eat because the drivers have gone off and sat somewhere else for ages. The last 3 orders I've done, one guy was stuck for ages and he says he's got a flat tire. The next one's stuck and he says his battery's dead. It's just rubbish. It's rubbish. It's organised crime, and it's linked to the government, which is what I find the most disturbing. I keep getting referred to completely inappropriate services with the NHS over and over again, and they're just sending me for unnecessary tests that are not related to the problem. I know what the problem is, they know what the problem is, and they've known for longer than I have, but they're refusing to actually go for the problem because that's where their corruption is. They're covering it up. This has been going on for a long time, and it's been continued. It's been a lifetime pretty much of abuse by the NHS in the mental health system specifically, gaslighting and pretending they don't know what's going on when they do, hiding what was done to me when I was a child. I have amnesia for most of the 13 years, not all of it, but most, but I have injuries on my body that have been long term. I have scarring on my bodies from operations. I have symptoms on my body they refuse to investigate, and when they do, they say there's nothing wrong when there is, and they just call it natural differences and stuff, but they don't acknowledge that what the differences are. They just say it's nothing. It's just a lie. It's all lies. Because they're all covering up what they've been doing for this entire time, because they have literally tortured me for my entire life. And I know I sound mad, but I have hundreds of pages of evidence of all of this, and I'm not mad. I'm very traumatized, yeah. But right now I'm off all my medication because I was forced off it with all this drama with the doctors, and I don't want to have to talk to them and stuff. And I'm doing better than I have ever been, actually, because I'm not talking to doctors so much, and I'm off this medicine that's making me sick. So I'm actually doing better than I ever have been. I've made so many complaints to the NHS about all of this stuff. And again, it's the same thing, completely ignoring the points I'm making, misdirecting it onto something else, adding completely random information that has nothing to do with the situation, excusing it with random things. Like, it's just a very manipulative responses, and then refusing to do any investigation, taking the words of doctors who are lying, ignoring all the evidence. It's wild. It's completely mad. A dentist I saw, I had a feeling this is where the dental problem started before I went to A&E the second time. I can't remember if I've told you this either, but I'll tell you this in a minute. The dentist that I was at, she gave me a filling, and this filling did not heal for months, and I've had to have the tooth removed actually because it was causing so many problems. When she had done that filling, she put, maybe there's a dentist out here that can tell me what this is, but she had tweezers and she put in 2 little sticks that were black, and I couldn't, like 2 very thin sticks that were black into the tooth. I thought maybe it's support or something at the time. I don't know dentistry. If it is, please tell me, because I would like to know if that's what it was. But much later on, it struck me, and I was like, oh my gosh, lead. Like, I was like, they've been poisoning me with liquid lead. Like, is it possible that this dentist put sticks of lead in the tooth? I don't have the tooth now. I should have asked for it, but I didn't want to feel creepy asking for the tooth. I wish I had now, but anyway. And recently I went in with needing a filling. I've requested these x-rays, and it looks like I need a filling in the tooth, but the dentist says there's no filling needed, and just appears that she's involved too. So basically, yeah, I've been denied human rights this entire time. I have had no human rights, not even close, nowhere close, not even close. I've had experienced nothing but abuse, and it goes actually far beyond the definition of torture. Psychological torture to an extreme. Like, I've been punished for years. Like, I've made a lot of big steps in my mental health, in spite of the NHS, but all they do is criticise and lie about the things, and they constantly cover it over with lies and projections and accusations and judgments. Nothing that they're saying is true. Nothing that they're saying makes sense. All the evidence points to something else, and they just refuse to acknowledge anything that's real. I can't remember if I said about A&E. I'm so sorry if I'm going to have to keep repeating this. I told you about the heart attack one, I'm pretty sure. But the second time I went to A&E, not that long ago, I was having problems with that too, just before I got it taken out. And and I had this infection in my body since I had that done. And I went to A&E. I was extremely unwell. I had been calling it, this is another thing, NHS 111. I called them, and A&E, I called A&E long before, and like the guys on the end, they were laughing at me. They're not sending an ambulance, telling me why did I even move to Scotland, just harassing me and being abusive and wouldn't help. But then this time, closer to recently, I called NHS 111 about the infection. I was so unwell, and I've been avoiding having contact with the NHS because of what's gone on. And I was so unwell to the point that I thought I was going to die. That's been multiple times in this situation, multiple times. But I didn't really want to die. So I called NHS 111 for help. I had the initial assessment, and then I told her I'd be called back by a doctor. And they always say it will come off an 0800 number or I think that's it, what they said, or an withheld number. It never comes from that number. It comes from an 0131 number. And I get 14, this night I had 14 calls, and I answer, hello. They sit in silence for a few minutes, and then I have to hang up. 14 times they called me, and then I gave up and cried and went to bed. Next day I was just even worse, so I called again, and it's the same thing, multiple calls. Like, this has happened multiple times where they've called me from a number they're not supposed to call, and they call again and again and again and again, and they just sit in silence. But later on, from that same number, I was called by someone that was actually nice, and the number had worked, and they were saying it's a problem with your phone. It's not a problem with my phone, and it's not a problem with their phone apparently either. Another time, around the same time with that infection, I called an ambulance asking to be taken to hospital because I was so sick. The ambulance person arrived. He was with a bag. He was in the car, no ambulance, and he made me extremely uncomfortable. He was gaslighting, he was smug and arrogant and extremely, I didn't trust him. I had a very bad feeling about him. And I had an absolute meltdown. He said he's not sending an ambulance. I can get to the dental place in the morning. They can get me a taxi there, but not on the way back. And I had no other option. He said he was basically threatening me, like, we can't get you. I had no money at all. So and it's like an hour and a half away, walking. So I said I can't if I can't get back, I can't go. And he said, well, if you don't want to go, don't go. And he was basically threatening with leaving me with no help at all unless I agreed to go in a taxi there and just have no way of getting back. So I had to agree to that. And then later on, I was getting sicker again. Same drama with the 111 ambulance, whatever. And then he arrived again at my door. And again, I freaked out this time. I had a massive meltdown, absolutely massive. He really triggered a lot of extreme trauma that I have. His behaviour, I did not feel safe at all. I begged the ambulance people to send another person, a female, please send someone else. It got to the point where I was literally in a PTSD state, completely frozen. I couldn't move, I couldn't speak, and then I ended up on the floor having a breakdown, like crying, screaming, begging them to give someone else just to get me to hospital. Refused again. Then they eventually got me in a taxi to A&E. This experience was horrible. Also, I got into A&E, same rubbish, did a blood test, said there's no infection, said they'll get me to the dentist in the morning, they'll get me a taxi back so they can do more tests. I was having a stroke as well, half my face had gone numb, and I was very sick. They did a blood test, said there's no infection, we'll get you to the dentist in the morning. Whole night, no other tests, even though I was having a stroke. They got me to the dentist in the taxi. I went to the appointment. They said there's nothing wrong there. It's healing. Nothing wrong. So I went to the desk to ask about the taxi back to A&E. They say, we don't know why you've been told that. We've never done that. They shouldn't have told you that. We don't know what you're talking about. So I had to walk like over an hour home, having a stroke. And by this time, like my whole half body had gone numb. I couldn't write for days afterwards properly. Like my whole brain just didn't, it was, like, I was damaged after that. And this has just continued. Like this stuff has just continued over and over. Like even when I've had people on my devices constantly. Like I've had devices attached to my accounts, devices that aren't mine attached to my accounts, devices on my Wi-Fi that are attached to my Wi-Fi that are not my Wi-Fi. I'm constantly being spied on, constantly being monitored. I haven't done anything wrong. I don't know what the first girl or anybody else has told them about who I am or what I'm like, but I haven't done anything wrong. I'm not a bad person. I sit in my room watching tarot videos and dog videos and cat videos, like, and making art and stuff all day, every day. That's literally all I do. I don't understand how people are justifying this to themselves. It's like, it's like I feel like, it sounds mad, but I feel like I've been dropped in some other like horrific dimension where people just are like don't care. Like everybody's completely psychopathic. I cannot understand how anyone is justifying doing this to anyone. Like I wouldn't do this to like a worse enemy. To even criminals and terrorists and stuff aren't treated like this, and I've not done anything wrong. I believed that I was accused of something, so I went and asked for police records. I asked the police, and I said I will supply you with whatever you need because I haven't done anything. They said no, we've got nothing. You've not been accused of anything. And I think I have, but they won't allow me to defend myself. They won't tell me anything. This is just like the summary of it as well. It's just been, it's relentless. It won't stop. And I've had enough. I'm well aware that people probably don't have the energy to deal with this. I don't, but I don't really have another option. And I think it's better that this just all gets out there because the corruption is sick. It's like, it's psychologically sick. Whoever's in charge of this, and it's obviously somebody in government because it's being facilitated by multiple areas that are linked to government. So it's obviously somebody in the government that has some pull and is arranging and doing this. And the amount of people that have been paid, my neighbours under my room, they've moved out now, but they would film me whenever I went outside. The neighbour next door directly to me, every time I call NHS 111, that's the only time I hear them move. And it's almost as if they are on my devices and they're involved. And I've never seen a person there. I've only heard them when I'm calling for help and when I'm getting these weird people coming to help that aren't supposed to help, like with the NHS 111. Like they say, like when I brought up the 14 calls and the more calls when this was happening, they said that you're not supposed to get a call from that number. They don't know what I'm talking about. They don't understand what's happening, and neither do I. Who is misdirecting my help? Who is misdirecting my calls? Who has their hand in all of this, arranging all of this? And how many people are you paying off? How much money is being spent on paying people off or offering people opportunities? And it's sick. And the organised crime, I'll just quickly get into it, about the family. It has a lot to do with like money laundering and I don't want to get too far into it, but some really sick stuff. Like for example, the fact that I believe my birth certificate is fake and it looks completely drawn. It doesn't look. I've ordered multiple other birth certificates by accident most of the time, but mine looks hand drawn. It's nothing like any birth certificate I've ever seen. It looks completely fake. Even the boxes aren't the same width. I brought all this to the police. They're not interested in any of it. So yeah, this has been ongoing for a very long time, and it shows no sign of stopping. I am completely isolated from physical mail. My calls and everything are read. I listen to all the time. Some other disturbing stuff as well. I don't think I should really share too much more. Yeah, for now, I think that's all I'll share for now. Yeah, let me just check if there's anything else I've missed. Oh, yeah, like an SSE and OVO, like they've been involved as well. I've been getting late night calls from businesses that are owned by people that work at SSE and OVO, and they've been scamming me, like sending me multiple final bills, refusing to take complaints. So they won't acknowledge complaints, so I can't bring it to the ombudsman people. And they're just stealing money from me. And OVO as well, they're doing the same thing, also refusing to acknowledge complaints. And whenever I go to these companies and ask them, they can never find my account. They have to go on hold, and then they somehow find my account, almost as if it's hidden or blocked, which is strange. And also the housing, when I moved in here, on my tenancy agreement, details were incorrect when they shouldn't have been. I was given 3 keys when I moved in. I had a weird feeling about it. And turns out there should have been 4 keys. I'm not going to blame the housing directly, but maybe it was somebody who worked for the housing, the person that changed the locks. Because there was a key missing, and people have been in my flat. Stuff has gone missing from my flat. Evidence has gone missing from my flat. Like recording devices have gone missing from my flat that have evidence on them. Memory cards have gone missing from my flat that have evidence on them. I can't leave my house, really, because I know that it's very likely that someone's going to come in and steal stuff, go through my stuff. I've had cameras in here and they get cut off at random times. I start freaking out at random times that are important. Like when I'm on phone calls and stuff, like trying to record it for evidence. It's just it's like something. It's like from the worst horror version of the Truman Show you could ever imagine. It's completely otherworldly. It's unbelievable, completely unbelievable, and it's done on purpose to be like this. Because the second I reach out for help, people just think I'm crazy, and for some of them, I don't blame them because I sound crazy because the situation is insane. But some of them I do, because you're a human rights organisation and I'm telling you I've got evidence. I've got hundreds, like a pile this big of evidence, and nobody is interested in hearing it. Yeah. Oh, and one more thing. The police, at another point, were forced to reopen the investigation because one of the complaint points they couldn't lie about, they just had no chance of lying about because there was evidence of it. They were forced to open the investigation again, and I was talking. I had the email address, and they had lost the evidence that I did have. They did have, apparently. They told me they'd lost it, and they said they were going to interview the person that tried to poison me. And I wanted to talk to them. I wanted to get like information. I wanted to know what I needed to do, what I could provide. They refused to talk to me about anything. They refused to engage with me about anything, would not tell me anything the whole time. And then they interviewed the suspect without ever telling me, and they released them with no charge. I don't know exactly why, but they released them, and like, I don't know if they said no evidence. I can't remember now, but like if they had come and talked to me, this could have been avoided. But I don't think they even wanted to avoid it because they wanted to. They had no. I don't believe they had any intention of actually doing anything about it, because that would have to expose the other corruption they've been dealing with. Yeah. What can I say, really? If you thought targeted individuals were not real and they're all just paranoid, no, it's not true. They exist. Yeah. So that's all I'm going to share right now. I've definitely missed out a load of stuff, and so many details. But for now, this is all I'm going to share. So yeah, this is what's going on in Edinburgh. Maybe someone needs to do something about it now. If I die, I die. Like if it happens, it happens. It's my time. I don't really mind anymore. I prefer not to. I'm not just going to let it happen, obviously. But yeah, if someone will do something about it, it's probably a good idea. I'm not the only one, and if this is the world you want to live in, like, it's happening to me now, but it's going to happen to you later. If you're seeing this and you're like, oh, it's never going to affect me, believe me, you're not right. They do this stuff to the most vulnerable. I have no friends, no family to talk to, nobody that's going to stand up for me. They do this stuff to the most vulnerable to start with, and they move up and up and up and up, and they'll move up to you eventually. Like, look around at what's happening. Is this the country you want to live in? It's not the country I want to live in. If I had any chance, I would be out. I'd be out of here now. I wouldn't stay here another day if I had a chance. This country has gone to ish. It's just, we're going into a very dark, dystopian, what's the word? Like tyrannical time, where there's going to be no freedom, no human rights. Just look at the situation and the extent to which people are willing to go. Like the following without question. How this is possible in an age where people are supposed to be able to critically think and stuff, I can't even begin to comprehend. So yeah, I don't have much faith that anything will change, but I think it's important that this information is out there. So there we go. I hope this doesn't happen to you. Maybe just share the video if you see it and you think it's worth sharing, because I do think it's important that people know what's going on. I'm not going to shut up, and I'm not going to stop whistleblowing what's going on, because it's important, and I can't be the only one that's under this situation right now, and I'm not going to stop until we're all out of it. So, okay, thanks, bye.